welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today we're honored to have Adam Green. Adam Green is I would call him the CEO of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee.
I'm a proud co-founder, and we are at boldprogressives.org, where people can look us up. And I'm talking to one of the most technologically advanced, important pieces of indie media infrastructure out there. It's an honor to be here.
This guy is going to be the hell of a promoter. Anyway, look, first of all, you're doing some great work, and I love some ideas. Let me be frank here. This is a second take because our system actually screwed up. But here's what I want to say, Adam. You had me doing a whole lot of thinking after we had our conversation.
It was a great conversation. You guys really missed out. You really missed out on a wonderful conversation.
But actually, it's going to be just as wonderful now. What's the problem with the Democratic Party?
Well, what have you been thinking about since then?
Everything.
Yeah.
You know, what I like to do, Adam, is the following. I like to listen to what people say all over, kind of massage it, and then come out with an answer. I do more listening than talking, even though I am talking right now, but I do a lot more listening than talking. It gives us the opportunity to come out with something that works.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, when the topics that you spoke about actually made a hell of a lot of sense. So let's start it.
Let's start
again.
So my starting point is lessons learned from 2024, where myself personally and our organization did a lot of work engaging the White House, showing them economic polling data, and having a nice victory where Joe Biden used some of our recommended language verbatim in his final State of the Union. The idea that Republicans want to cut Social Security in order to give tax cuts to billionaires, something that was rarely said back then and now is commonplace, especially in the context of the Big Beautiful Bill, where we had that exact message with Medicaid and other programs. Fast forward a few months, we worked very closely with the Kamala campaign, and she took all three of our top recommendations, talk about grocery corporate price gouging, talk about taxing billionaires, talk about protecting Social Security. Every one of her speeches had those things. But when it came time for the debate with her and Trump, she won it with some beautiful abortion answers and some fine democracy answers, but did not throw one punch on economic issues, which was the number one issue for voters. And that said to me, I think a lot of voters believe she didn't really mean it. It wasn't in her heart, it wasn't in her gut. And towards the end of the campaign, I spent 9 days on the ground with bold economic populist, independent mechanic Dan Osborne running for Senate in Nebraska. And he dripped and oozed authenticity on working people's issues. Any question asked would be about workers versus corporations. And one of my big lessons since the election has been, we need politicians who are from the gut, not from the teleprompter. It's not sufficient to actually be on message if you don't mean it and you can't defend it. You have to live it, breathe it. Another lesson is we need people who are willing to pick fights with villains. A lot of this is about storytelling, and we have to be able to tell a story. And the third lesson is we need to channel outsider rage. We need to position ourselves on the outside, not be defending a crusty inside. And Hillary Clinton represented the inside while Donald Trump represented the outside position. And unfortunately, the same is true with Kamala by the end of the campaign. So those are my big three lessons. We need to have from the gut economic populism, pick fights with corporate villains, and channel outsider energy in order to get back on track and win again.
Now, one of the things that impressed me with some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier is you went as far as stating that AOC was actually viable because of where she stood. She did a test that pointed out that AOC had a lot of Trump voters, or a lot of Trump voters voted for AOC.
Yeah.
What's your thought about that? Kind of express what we discussed on that.
Yeah, after the election, AOC noticed that a lot of her own voters voted for Trump, and she posed the question on Instagram, why'd you do it? And the answer was not that there's some weird Venn diagram of Medicare for all supporters who don't like immigrants. That's not why people like Trump and Bernie or like Trump and AOC. It's that they said, you are challenging the system. You're busting up the system. So is he. That's why we voted for both of you. And it's really important for Democrats to keep that in mind, because it's not just about this policy or that policy. The threshold question for any, especially presidential campaign, is, are you channeling the outsider vibe right now? And if you're not, I think you're disqualified. So Gavin Newsom, please, no, he's out. He's out. He's not authentic. He's not an outsider. He's just like a creature of the inside. But there's some people in the middle. I love Ro Khanna. I think his policy positions are great. He's a wonderful, warm human being on a personal level. If he won the nomination, I'd be very happy. But also, I wonder, like, are the same mechanics and union people that supported Donald Trump and supported Dan Osborne, who I was on the ground helping in Nebraska, looking at Ro Khanna or someone like Pete Buttigieg and saying, that's my guy? I don't know. I think there's some gray areas, and we have to figure that out as a party.
Now, you mentioned Ro Khanna earlier, but there's some others that kind of tickled you as well.
Who tickled me?
Well, we earlier mentioned, I after I told you about the judge in North Carolina, the Supreme Court Justice, I think her name was Riggs. I think her name is Riggs. Yeah. We pointed out that is a type of authenticity and aggressiveness that people were looking for. I don't quite remember the other person that we counted, but it was a person in Michigan, a person in Iowa, and a person in
Maine.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So what we're reflecting on is that in order to save the country and fix a very broken Democratic Party, one way of doing it is have a bold, inspiring person run for president, win the nomination, win the presidency, and have the courage and backbone to push the rest of the party out of the way and say, this is my party now. It's not just about winning a few more inspirational people in Congress. It's about somebody who will reshuffle the entire deck and rebrand an entire broken party. And it's like, what would ever have to be true for scared electability voters, people who in 2020 were like, I love Bernie or I love Elizabeth Warren, but they just can't win. I have to vote for Joe Biden, right? How do we get them back on board for an actual transformational person? I think the answer is we need the optics of the 2026 election to be that someone bold, inspiring, transformational won in swing states and swing districts. That has to be the chatter, the conventional wisdom. And working backwards from that goal, there's a really important Iowa Senate race where we have, in a primary, actually 2 economic populists, either of whom would be good. J.D. Scholten, who was at this conference, Nathan Sage, who's a union guy and a veteran, both running for this nomination. If they knocked off Joni Ernst, the person who said everyone will die when asked about Medicaid cuts, so heartless, that would be a shockwave. No one sees it coming. And Iowa is the first presidential state, at least on the Republican side now. In Maine, we have Katie Porter's chief of staff, Jordan Wood, also worked for End Citizens United, anti-corporate money, anti-corruption, running against Susan Collins. He raised $2 million in his first quarter. If he knocked off Susan Collins after so many people tried, and it was somebody on an anti-corporate money message, anti-corruption, that would be huge. And then in Michigan, at this conference, Abdul El Said is running for Senate. And he's an economic populist, he's pro-working people. And Alyssa Slotkin, who's a fine Democrat, won that seat in the last election. But if a bold, vibrant, economic populist progressive also won in Michigan, that would prove, you know what? You don't have to be whatever your definition of centrist or moderate or mushy is. You can be vibrant and still win in the Midwest. So those are some of the people that I think if they won would set the tone, set the conditions for the 2028 primary that would allow people's heart and head to be united and vote for someone truly inspiring, which we need to save the country and save the Democratic Party.
I think, believe it or not, in a sort of different way, I think that's what Trump proved, isn't it? Because what he did is triangulated Democrats.
Yeah.
He became to the working class what Democrats thought they were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he outflanked us on some of our actual issues and certainly on the vibes. Someone, my friend Jen Ancona, who's done some research on Democratic ads versus Republican ads, was telling me today. So one of the benefits of the file being corrupted is here's a little update for you. She was saying that Republican ads are 80% storytelling and our ads are 80% policy. Yeah. And they were saying Trump ads would be like, he's the guy who wants no tax on tips. He's the guy who wants no tax on Social Security. And then it's like 25 seconds of just like on your side, economic populism, pro-worker stuff. And our stuff is like, wonky policy here and wonky policy there and, cut art and weird fonts and nothing personal. And it just isn't emotionally compelling. And that's something, our storytelling is broken. And therefore, a lot of working people thought Trump's my guy when they shouldn't have. So we got to repair that. And that's why we need, outsider vibes, people who are picking fights with corporate villains, and people who are, just not perceived as of the system.
I tell you what, as an independent journalist, that is something I have had to learn. That is something that I'm learning. For a long while, I was a front pager, an actual contributing editor to Daily Kos. And
now, what is the Daily Kos?
the Daily Coast is the largest. In fact, it's where this started. Yeah.
A little bit of a joke there. Okay.
Yeah, I know
Okay,
you're joking.
okay.
I know you're joking. You know.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's something we have to express. It's the largest progressive rag out there, and for the longest time in writing, that is where I think I failed, because I had all the answers. I'm an engineer by training, and I had all the answers in numbers. And I always tell people, for me, it's all about numbers and facts. Unfortunately, for most people, it's not numbers and facts. It's about what I feel and where I am.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Somebody else at this conference told me that people remember a statistic for like X number of minutes, basically, or it might have been seconds, but stories stay with you. Right. And that's why I think it's important to talk about how Dan Osborne, when I was on the ground watching him, any reporter or voter who would ask him a question about economics, immigration, climate, he'd always make it about workers versus corporations.
Right.
Not because he was media trained, but because that's who he was. And we need people who just are from the gut like that. In contrast, I actually showed a video at a panel that I led yesterday, and it featured this guy named Derek Thompson. He is the co-author of Abundance with Ezra Klein at a panel in DC about a month ago called Welcome Fest, where he was on stage and he said, some people say, this is like a big centrist, branded conference, I'd say. He's like, some people say Donald Trump has a story and people on the left have a story and we in the center need a story. You know what my answer to that is? Stories are for children. We just need policies and plans.
Wait.
And this is a guy.
That was in the book plan?
This is, to be fair, I don't believe this is in the book, but this shows the political instincts of this particular author of the book, who's up on a stage in front of a bunch of politicians, giving them this ridiculous political advice. And one of my critiques of Abundance, having not read it, but assuming that I would like some of the things in it and not like others, is it was not written to be a political document. It was written to be a wonky behind-the-scenes policy document that has been misinterpreted, given our loss, as some kind of like political mantra. And meanwhile, the guy who wrote it, who's a policy wonk, is like, we don't need storytelling. Yeah. Oh my God, did he pay attention to all of the Trump elections, right? Like, it's a crazy notion, but that's why I say we need to be willing to pick fights with villains and tell stories. And not all Democratic politicians believe that. Some people say, I'm fighting for everybody. Imagine a Superman movie with no villains. How boring a movie would that be? If Democrats are the hero of our own story, if progressives are the hero, we need to be fighting someone. We can't be fighting. There's no such thing as fighting for everybody.
About that Abundance book, it's interesting because I refuse to read it. I thought about actually buying it, and I don't have much time to read these big books anyway. But one of the interesting things that it came out, and some of the messaging, was really to sort of protect the corporate class in it. They were talking about abundance, but in sort of a manner that ensured the corporate classes maintain the status quo. It is shameful. In other words, we have to stop preaching, what's the word? Not sequestered. You have to stop preaching.
Like redistribution?
No. Actually, they don't want, you're right. Not redistribution, but somehow abundance. But there's a word that I'm looking for. I can't pick it up right now. Okay. But I think it's important what you said. We have to have that story, and that story has to connect.
Like austerity? Like austerity or...
Austerity, that's the word. That's the word.
Yeah.
Sometimes my mind goes.
Do you want to just do it again? We'll fix it in editing?
Huh?
Want to just do it again and we'll fix it in editing? Just kidding. Joking. We're keeping it real here. No fixing and editing.
And anybody who watches my videos know.
Okay.
We're real, baby.
Okay, we're real.
But here's the thing. Because everybody has those laps. When you start getting up there in age, you'll get there someday.
Thank you.
You start to have these little things like, I can't remember the word austerity. But
I'm with you.
But it's so important for us to do that. Environmental issues is a working class issue, and we can make even though a lot of the gay issues and the social issues can be made working class issues, but you have to know what to do. You have to get away from some of the wonkiness. And don't let them fool you. You still need to be woke.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard when you think about it, right? If you're talking about the climate stuff, are you talking about CO2 emissions and 2050 standards and X% of this degree? Or are you thinking like, The posh people living up there on the hill have really clean water.
Right.
Why are kids drinking polluted water? What's that going to do to their health? People get that immediately. That's a story.
And
Why is that
see what
hard?
you did there?
Why is that hard? Right.
Do you see what you did there? Normally we would say, oh, the neoliberals, the centrists who want to say, we need to fix the water issue with them, not having the villain.
You need a villain. You always need a villain. Yeah. But again, there's people actually out there preaching, people who are considered credible, preaching to very important political candidates and politicians saying, you don't need to pick a fight with villains. Billionaires are part of the big tent. We're fighting for everybody, growth for all. And it's like, when Amazon is both screwing over their own workers and saying to little guy small businesses who are on Amazon, oh, we see your data, you have a good business, we're going to replicate it and push you down to page 50 while we put ourselves on page 1. Like, that's a villain. And small businesses should be outraged and workers should be outraged, and it's hurting our economy, it's shrinking economic opportunity, and there's a villain there. It's not growth for all. We have to be willing to pick fights on behalf of the little guy. Billionaires
are the villains. And this is not just conjecture. This is not just us looking for a villain. They are a villain. Give me a closer.
Give you a closer? The closer would be about Netroots itself. Especially, in light of COVID, there's not enough time to talk to people. I see you once a year, and it's always a pleasure to see you. And you have these wonderful conversations. You have conversations in the hallway. Mm-hmm. I've reflected in this conversation of other conversations I've had.
Right.
And it's really important that as a community, we make time to actually talk to each other, think together, and plot together a little bit. Because, the big guys they talk. They get paid to talk in the Chamber of Commerce rooms. And we got to make sure we're organizing together. And it's really an honor to be here with you and with our fellow compatriots here who care about indie media and independent thinking.
Well, Adam Green from the Bold Progressive Change Campaign Committee. You have to tell people how they can support you.
Sure. Well, we actually invented a $3 ask. Back when people were asking for $20, we were like, if you can afford $3, chip in at boldprogressives.org. It was very heartwarming when we got off the ground 16 years ago that senior citizens would write us handwritten notes saying, I can't afford $5 or $10. I can do $3. I really believe in your mission, so here it is. And we keep that in our heads all the time as we're hiring people and doing our activities. But we do half elections, half government relations, and it really makes a difference when people go to boldprogressives.org and chip in. Follow us on our social media accounts, Bold Progressive. I'm Adam Green across social media. So please follow us and get involved. We're thrilled to work with you.
I want to add something here, and this now is some serious statement about progressive groups. I come to Netroots every year. I try to get as many people on as possible. And I try to get as many people who have organizations to come out here and talk about their organizations and how you can actually help those organizations do the good work that they're doing. A message to any of these organizations listening out there. In this business, which is supporting people, 1 + 1 is not equal to 2. 1 + 1 is equal to 3. 1 + 1 can equal 10. When you collaborate, you can get a wider net than trying to get the net alone. Adam Green, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so kindly for having been here.
Thank you, sir.
With Politics Done Right.
Always. Thank you for all you're doing.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.